Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Lee and Ragna and your team of wonderful elves who put all of this together and make it happen, usually just so seamlessly that we don't realize there's a lot of people working behind the scenes here. I'm going to do the usual let me share screen conversation with you all, and I hope this kicks in fast. So here we go. The thing I would like to speak about today, or that I think was suggested in a very gentle way by Philip, was bringing about introspection philosophy. And I decided I would narrow it a little bit further into making meaning and meaning in making. If we think about textiles, my area, my world, my passion is textiles. And when we think about textiles, they're such an integral part of the human experience, whether quotidian or ceremonial. And there's a universality to our experience of cloth, right? Every culture has references to cloth. Cloth making, preparation, mythology, language, rituals. Cloth is our world, cloth is our life. And it is kind of ubiquitous to our lives. And so my advice to many of my students is do something radical with your textiles. Nobody will see you coming, right? And with textiles, we can change the world one thread, one piece of fabric, one garment, one towel, one carpet at a time. Cloth can be a medium for expressing deep fundamental insights, both conscious and subconscious. The fact that cloth is so integral to our lives allows for communication on a deeper, nuanced, even, I dare say, metaphysical level. Textiles materialize creativity, narrative, and insight at both the conscious and subconscious level. And those of you who make know this to be true. Often, textile making transforms the invisible into visible, a thought, an idea, a concept, a feeling, a mood, a memory, and the mortal into immortal, and eventually the mundane into divine. So on that, a note of understanding the capacity and the range of what a textile can do, I'm so thrilled to be presenting this on the heels of the fantastic speakers who preceded me. And I think, as Philip said, this particular talk and the slides I prepared might sing to all of us. In this moment in time, as we emerge from a pandemic, it's a time of feelings, isn't it? It's a time where we've dealt with loss, struggles, pain, worry, and this is going to take time to heal. It also gives us a moment to pause, ask the big questions. We have to remember that the dark ages of Middle and medieval Europe and the plague gave way to the Renaissance, the dawn of reason and enlightenment. So perhaps this is our time. Maybe we're ready for a Renaissance 2.0. What do we do? What are the questions we can ask? Philosophy is one of the ways to do this. I find a huge amount of my time can be spent in philosophical thinking, and usually Rodin's thinker is what comes to mind when we think of a philosopher. But I'm here to share that the word philosophy itself is the union of two very lovely, beautiful words, love and wisdom. Philo means liking, friendship, affection, love, and Sophie is Sophia, wisdom. The combination of these two words brings us philosophy, the love of wisdom. Now, traditionally, this thinker is who we think a philosopher is. And I would like to propose that a good philosopher is, like Anuba on the right, a maker, potentially a textile maker. If we reference the ancient texts of Advaita Vedanta philosophy that comes from the East, which is the purview of all human beings, we have access to this. Our nature is said to be that of truth, consciousness, bliss. So where does it go? Do we touch it through the day? You are that. That is what the texts say. That is what the great sages said. That thou art, names of books you've seen. In Sanskrit, tat tvam asi, that thou art. So what is it that you are? Do you taste truth, consciousness, and bliss on a daily basis? You know, where I've experienced it and where a lot of people in our world of textile making experience it is when we make, in the very act of making textiles, in the very act of consciously making textiles, it brings us to the experience of what? Presence. The now. We hear of it in all these new age self-help books. Come into the present moment. Be here now. The value of now. Making brings you into the now. You also experience being. And in the experience of the now, you have no choice. Being is a fancy English word for saying I is, right? I am. So isness of something is what we term being. So the experience of who I am, what I am, can be experienced when we make. Those of you who make know what I'm speaking about. On the right, I have this beautiful image of fabric made by one of our grad students who graduated last year, Shraddha. She made this from Kala cotton, a tiny, tiny staple cotton fiber. Made the yarn, spun by hand on a peti charka in New York City, sometimes sitting in Central Park, during the peak of the pandemic, to experience tactility, to experience being, to experience presence and now. And in doing so, guarantee, I will give this guarantee, your experience is bliss. So the experience of being itself is bliss. Now I ask, do we need to think our way to wisdom and being a philosopher? Ouch, right? In this time and age, how about we make our way to wisdom? Find the wisdom of the material, seek the wisdom of our hands, the memory in our hands, the memories of our traditions. And I think between the two people on screen right now, we have Aradhita, who just graduated from the MFA Textiles program that I lead, looking rather happy with her position of finding wisdom and making her way to wisdom, unlike our gentleman on the right. Sanya, another textile MFA graduate and one of our stars from our first generation of makers, actually weaves these magical pieces of three-dimensional structures that can be used in architectural spaces on a hand loom, on a simple, basic hand loom. The creativity that she brings to the work, the skills that she brings to the work, all align in this moment where her hands meet the material and the machine that she operates does some of the work. So philosophy, as Socrates says, begins in wonder. And to tell you the truth, it also ends and leads to wonder. The sheer wonder of experiencing a space that is created with care represents spaces, whereas Tagore, the great Nobel laureate from India, said, a space where the mind is without fear, a place of calm, a quiet, and rest. I look at opportunities to find philosophers in everything I read and people I speak with. And in this, we see life is just an opportunity to create meaning, to find meaning, to be useful, to be meaningful. And the question eternally asked is, if we're just going to die, what's the point of living? Yes. We often go around looking for the meaning of life. And I love this quote from Joseph Campbell, who says, people say that we're all seeking, and what we are seeking is a meaning for life. Campbell suggests, I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think that what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonances with our own innermost being and reality. So just consider that. Are we looking for purpose? Are we looking for meaning? Or are we looking to be, to live? And he says, so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive. A textile maker knows how that's possible. When you are in the zone, an athlete knows how that's possible. So I looked at another person who writes very poetically and beautifully, and that's Khalil Gibran, who many of you have heard at weddings, quoted at weddings from the Beloved and the Prophet. And he refers to work as love made visible. Or I would say in our case as textile makers, making is just love in action. Your love of the art form, your love of the material, your love of an idea, your love to care for somebody in some expressive way. So what a principle would be, and this is from the school of practical philosophy, is to allow the attention to rest on the working surface when you make, be it sewing, be it weaving, be it spinning, be it knitting, be it stitching two pieces of cloth together. Allow the tool to do its job, get out of the way. When I say get out of the way, I'm talking to your ego, right? The who I am, the preetiness of me doesn't need to be there in that moment. All that matters is what is present, the knowledge I bring, the creativity of the moment, and be authentic and true to that moment. So Khalil Gibran actually said, when you work, you are a flute through whose heart the whispering of the hours turns to music. In our classrooms, the making is what leads the thinking. The making leads the concept. The making leads us to be the best of who we are. And we have here Shraddha, who's I spoke of a little earlier. And she's literally knitting memories. And Khalil Gibran says, and to love life through labor is to be intimate with life's inmost secret. To work with love. What is it to work with love? It is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit. We have Therumi, who came to the program, the MFA Textile program, as a graphic artist and graphic designer. She learned backstrap weaving in Peru and Guatemala from master weavers, and then developed her own iconography and her own idiom through the process of backstrap weaving. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit. Work, Khalil Gibran said, is love made visible. I think we can all do with a lot of love. As we work, what is really, really important, and I spoke to bringing your attention to where the working surfaces are, it sounds like a lot to be done. Literally what I'm saying is, don't do, just come to rest. Rest where the making is happening. And here we see Sagarika creating her wonderful tactile thesis work again towards the early days of COVID. Her work embodies mindful making, where she used several techniques with the concept of social justice activism in place. And in that, she created these beautiful pieces that actually spoke to us as human beings just through the tactility of the work, the beautiful elaborate colors, and just the vibrancy of her own personality channeled through it. Here I have, at the end of our program, students take a course that I teach called Philosophy of Textiles. And at the end of it, they look back on their 2 years of working in the master's program and prepare a manifesto as they prepare to go out into the world. And here is this is written literally, carved into a mushroom by Sage Devlin. And this is how she presented her manifesto. And I'll give you a little piece that probably takes us to a nice ending of this talk. She said, contemplate your relationships with other people, and with matter? Are they equal? Are they respectful? Regard your artwork as a companion. Support one another in a mutual process of becoming. Your actions have significance. Nothing exists in isolation. No matter how hard you may try to isolate yourself, there is no reason to get overwhelmed. You are just a small point on a tremendous web. Silence it all for a time and just listen to your hands. And to take you to a little meditative zone, this is what Sagarika said at the end of her thesis, and in her manifesto. I quote a small section of it as she says, and I love that I get to quote great philosophers and students who graduated from our program. Sagarika spoke in her manifesto saying, this is what she discovered. It is the work that speaks. You speak through it. Take time to look back at what you made. The work tells you what's next. Stay in this dialogue with the material. Grow intimate. Invent, driven by curiosity in your belly. Studio is the kitchen where you marinate and create. Listen to the quiet voice. I will quickly jump to one last idea, which was shared by the last speaker, Nola. So I thought I was not sure if I should go into this aspects, and she mentioned almost every quote I was going to bring in, but just a quick word about Gandhi. Gandhi's strategic use of khadi in India's nonviolent movement for independence from British rule is an example of the power of cloth, is an example of how cloth can move people, can move nations, and win freedom. The word satyagraha was mentioned. Satyagraha comes from two words in Sanskrit, satya meaning truth. Remember, we spoke of truth, consciousness and bliss as the very nature of our beings. So satya being truth, what is, what's real. Agraha means holding firm, to insist on. So resisting with the force of truth is a peaceful, non-violent way of resisting injustice. And with khadi, what does khadi mean? You've probably heard the word several times. It literally just means cloth that had yarn that was spun by hand and then woven by hand. I think today we might even include knitting by hand as the times change. And Gandhi wrote to Tagore when Tagore actually said to him, this is the age of the industrial age, and that India should not miss out on it. Gandhi replied in a letter to him and he said, this is a plea for the spinning wheel to recognize the dignity of labor. And that's what khadi did. The spinning wheel really became the great equalizer. It provided an ideology for self-government, self-reliance, a decentralization or localization of fiber, yarn, cloth, and clothing making. It was the symbolic end of foreign rule or colonization or imperialism by ending dependency on foreign fabric. The background of this being the cotton was grown and looted from India, taken to the mills of Manchester, where they were produced in huge volumes as mass production in the industrial age, and then sold back to Indians at epic high costs and high prices. So this was by making our own thread, by spinning your own yarn, and then making your own cloth. It was a defiance of everything that was being taken away from the humanity of that time. It was an expression of dignity of labor when rich and poor Indians participated and created a feeling of and a sense of self-esteem, which I think we should all be remembering. To end, I see Philip's just come back on to probably tell me stop. I wanted to end with quotes you rarely hear Gandhi say. And I wanted you to know that Churchill, the world is usually a huge fan of. Us Indians tend to think of him with a little bit of a different attitude, simply because Churchill refused to meet Gandhi when he came to the UK. And he referred to him as the naked fakir. And very cleverly, after his visit to Buckingham Palace, when Gandhi met with the king at the time, the press asked him, do you think, you were adequately clothed for this visit? Gandhi said, the king was wearing enough clothes for the both of us. And I take that as tongue-in-cheek and really beautiful and sarky and fun and charming for a small little man, a diminutive man who changed the world. As he said, his life is his message, and in a gentle way, you can shake the world. So make textiles. We've seen what it can do in the world, and allow your textiles to help you be present, be still, and just be. Thank you, everyone. This has been quite the honor and pleasure to be able to speak with you. Thank you, Philip.
Preeti, the honor is all ours. It was such a beautiful